Hello everyone, my name is Jessie February and welcome to the recap of round 12 or day 12 of the tournament if you are excluding the free days. It looks like it's an additional free day for two of our players. In game 1 we have Yan Nepomniachtchi versus Hikaru Nakamura. Can you blame them? Can you? This game was the now infamous fast Berlin draw, the pinnacle of GM draw technology designed to be Sophia rule resistant. I don't argue that this sort of thing is good for the event or chess in general, but you can't blame the players at all. It's been a long 12 rounds with two very important games to go, but 2 free days in a row? Can't go wrong. Can't be bad for the players. So let's take a look at this marvel of a game. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5, knight f6, and we will definitely see nothing but theory in this game. And if you are wanting to learn how to draw like a grandmaster, this is the way to go. And after queen takes d6, there's queen e4 check, queen e6, and this threefold repetition, which then ends up being a draw. And usually there's a certain number of moves you have to make before being able to offer a draw, but there are things like perpetual check, threefold repetition. That is a sort of loophole for players wanting a draw much sooner. And here is a case in point. Let's go on to the next game. Game 2, we had Dingren versus Rajabov. The Nimzo Indian isn't generally the sort of opening that gives you chances to blow your opponent off the board quickly, but it's in the nature of the game that you're never too far from a disaster. And to see who the disaster in this game was for, I guess we'll have to take a look at the game. So it started with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and bishop to b4. Nimzo Indian, what a classic, bishop d3 and d5, capturing on d5, pawn takes d5, a3, bishop to d6, and queen to c2. The novel fashion of the variation. Knight a6 definitely came as a shock. Here preparing c7 to c5 at some stage. We definitely saw that white was enticed and definitely gave in eventually. So after knight e to d2, c5, and taking on a6, a takes, b takes a6, and capturing on c5. And here we find that black has a lot of weaknesses on the d file and on the a file. And black also has compensation, which is the bishop pair, and open files for the rooks. So let's see how white proceeds after b4. Although it is a novelty, the strength of the move is not so high since the b pawn becomes vulnerable later on. After bishop to d6, bishop b2, and somehow white is actually fine here after castles, bishop takes h2, and looks like the Greek gift works. After king takes h2, knight to g4, and here, of course, if king g1, queen h4, and black is winning. But king g3 here, queen d6, and knight to f4. Even after g5, I believe there's knight takes d5, and white is completely fine. So bishop b2 was played instead, and after a5, b5 by white, trying to keep the pawns on the a file doubled. However, it has been necessary to equalize the position here after a6, h3, stopping this Greek gift from still happening, bishop to d7, and capturing on a6, completely giving the advantage to black here after rook takes a6, allowing the rook to swing over if need be later on, and rook d1, rook to b6 exclam. This captures the b file and creates a trap in the case of capturing the d5 pawn. So rook to d2 by Ding. White loses the final chance at castle without huge losses here after queen c8 with f3, preventing the knight f6 to e4 move, but makes e3 pawn very, very weak. So rook to e8 and king to f2. I remember watching this game live. I was completely terrified of what would happen next. After queen to b8, queen c1 was played. I believe here bishop c1 was definitely an alternative. After queen to c1, rook takes e3. And we see all the household furniture starts to hit the fan. Knight to d1, rook back. I believe here also Tamer had this possibility of taking, but what better way to consolidate and to make sure everything is safe than to retreat after winning material, and after knight e3, rook to b3, and knight to g4. but Tamer just takes with the bishop, and after pawn takes, there's rook to c8, queen to a1, and bishop to f4. Unfortunately, that also marked the end of the game. There was way too much pressure on the B and C file, with the bishop doing a great job. King still in a lot of danger. What an attacking game. Game 3, we have Rapport versus Fabiano Caruana. This game was another long maneuvering Berlin, which seems to be the popular sort of opening for the tournament. So let's begin as we see the Berlin, but capturing on c6 and capturing back with the d pawn here, and after bishop to e6, knight d7, knight b3. We see a number of maneuvers capturing on b3 and f6. Knight just comes back. Nice to sort of provoke this f6 move and then just bring the knight back. And after knight e2, knight e6. And we see some maneuvers with h4. h5 was played, allowing black to keep its bishop here instead of capturing. Now the bishop can go to a7. But Fabiano decides not to. Caruana allows the trade, not keeping the bishop, and knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop to e3. And now, of course, white has this chance to also longside castle. We'll see what happens after queen g4, king to g8, g3, and g6. Long castles and queen to f7. After f4, there's an exchange, and black here definitely had this chance to take the bishop, but decided to play king to a7 instead. After rook d to f1, we have f5 and queen h3, queen f6, and king to b1, just keeping that king on the queen side rather safe, avoiding any dangerous checks in the long run. After rook h to f8, there's rook f2 and queen to e7. This apparently creates problems for the f5 pawn. And after bishop to h6, there's rook f6 and queen h4. Rook g8 is a brilliant move. And here comes a very interesting series of moves. g5, the idea behind rook g8, after queen to e4, queen d6, capturing the knight, taking the rook, and after bishop takes g5, rook takes, and giving the rook back. Look at those moves. Queen takes g3, queen to e4, and h6. And here we find that the queens end up trading, and Rapport finds a very nice way of holding a draw here, even though he is a pawn down, just exchanging some pawns. And I believe on move 52, they decided on a draw. In the fourth and final game of the 12th round, we have Jan-Krzysztof Duda versus Reza Firouzja. And we have another d4 in this game. Duda playing d4 against Reza, and queen to c2, capturing on c4. I'm hoping to get this opening right. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is the anti-Mirren, starting with queen c2, avoiding the exchange on c4, but it happens anyway. After bishop, there's a3, a5, and I believe the idea here is just for black to gain some queenside space, and after e5, capturing, knight takes, bishop takes, and bishop to a6. And here Reza goes for something rather interesting, capturing on b2 as well, and rook to d1, and here queen to e7. And I'm not too sure if this was well thought out, but after bishop to c5, it actually poses the question to the queen and rook. In the case of queen takes c5, there's bishop takes h7, rook takes h7, and queen takes queen, losing the queen. So here, the queen will have to move again and decides to go to c7. After bishop takes f8, rook takes, and g3. So apparently up to this moment, both sides have shown their theoretical knowledge, which absolutely surprises me. The fact that this is still theory, giving up the exchange and all, is really impressive. So g5 was played by Firouzja. Firouzja makes the first step to the side, and we've definitely seen over the last couple of games, Firouzja's put his king safety on the back seat. The move weakens the black king and gives a significant advantage to white, and after f4, capturing on f4, g takes f4, bishop takes f4, and queen takes b2. So giving up the f pawn for that very dangerous looking b pawn, and rook to d3. After queen e7, rook f2, closing the second rank for the white's queen and allowing black to regroup his pieces. And after bishop to e5, there's queen to e2 and knight to f6. I believe knight f4 was better here, and in view of rook takes f4, bishop takes f4, and queen to g4 check, thinking that you're sort of losing the bishop. There's bishop to g5, and after h4, there's king h8. If queen takes bishop, there's rook g8. If pawn takes, the file is now closed, and black can safely play queen to c5 check, picking up the bishop on c4. So no harm there, although I think he missed this and instead decided to go knight f6, a necessary switch from an active play, and after king h1, king h8, rook to g2, and rook to b8, taking over the only other open file here, and after bishop to h2, knight to e8, trying to bring the knight to d6 here, and after rook d1 covering the back rank, there's queen f6, after rook f2, queen g6, and the rook comes back to g1 here, capturing on e4 check, knight takes, and rook takes f7. However, rook f to g2 was a better try here, and after rook takes f7, there was knight g3, king to g2, check, and rook takes, king takes, and I believe this is where they agreed on a draw on move 41. Thank you so much to everyone who watched this video. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. What a pleasure it is to be working with Lichess. I actually cannot wait for my Lichess hoodie. It's coming soon. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have Lichess merch. I'm freaking out. This is amazing. Okay, bye everyone.